Hey, hello. Welcome to episode number 78 of the People We Love podcast. I am Adam Choit. What's up? If you're new here, what I do is interview people from all walks of life, often comedians and other artists about their lives and careers. It's casual conversation, but I also ask everyone to highlight someone they love, someone who they admire, who influenced them, inspired them, supported them. For more, check out peoplewelovepodcast.com. That's peoplewelovepodcast.com. And the Instagram handle is @peoplewelovepodcast. And you can find me on Instagram as well, @AdamChoit, my name, if you want to follow me too. And remember to tap subscribe or follow on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on. So, today's guest is TK Coleman. He's an entrepreneur and the education director at Praxis. And he's also the director of entrepreneurial education at FEE, the Foundation for Economic Education. Growing up in Chicago, Illinois, TK's supportive, tight-knit family and church community really shaped him as a person. But later on during his college years at Western Michigan University, that's where TK studied philosophy and started to think about life's big questions even more. And that's also where he discovered the music of the talented jazz singer-songwriter Kurt Elling and was immediately profoundly impacted. Let's just get started. Here's TK Coleman. So it's good to see you today, TK Coleman. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. How are you holding up?
Man, I hold up pretty well. I've learned at this stage to treat myself with love and respect no matter what's going on around me, you know? So yep. I'm doing pretty well, man.
Yeah, I was going to ask, are you having a fun 2020 or having a great 2020?
Oh, yeah. I'm grateful to be in the land of the living. You know, at the end of 2019, I lost one of my childhood friends, a very close friend.
I'm sorry to hear that.
It was a shocking thing, and it's a disheartening thing. And when that sort of thing happens, you know, you experience enough of that. It makes you appreciative to have the luxury of being able to worry, having the luxury of being able to be afraid. So if you ever find yourself angry at something, sad about something, worried about something, well, that's a luxury. That's a luxury that comes from actually being alive. And there are many people that have not made it this far. You know, when you're young, life is mostly a game of addition. You're thinking about more money, more freedom, more things, more happiness. But as you get older, life becomes a game of subtraction. You start to lose people. You start to lose things. And the subtraction side of life can kind of put things in context and make it a little bit easier to be grateful because you learn how much worse life could often be. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of stuff out there that we can be legitimately angry about and worried about. And I'm not going to preach any Pollyanna philosophy about how you should feel bad if you are worried, because that's human too. But, you know, even in the midst of that, there can be a will to live. There can be a will to meaning. There can be a spirit of resilience and creativity that says life absolutely sucks. I'm going to be honest about it. And at the same time, I'm not going to be the gazelle that lays down and just waits for the lion to eat me. I'm going to run like hell until my life gets taken. And I'm going to run towards something that's purpose-oriented, goal-oriented, and that's fulfilling to me. And if life grinds me under its feet, if it crushes me, if it embarrasses me, let all those things happen when I'm in the middle trying to make the most of what I can do. Let all those things catch me in the middle of engaging the creative process with as much enthusiasm as I can. It's not about being delusional. It's about being self-determined. And that's what I'm all about, man.
That was awesome. And all I asked was, how are you doing in 2020? But that's why I follow you. That's why I like your content, to hear things like that. And like, it's good for people to like be inspired and even emotionally so. Like I'm ready to get out there and take on the world, so to speak for sure. What about your life? Why don't we get into it? Like, born and raised, the drive home from the hospital when you were just born. What do you remember from that? What were you told about that? Even just like real young, what do you remember? And we'll kind of get into it.
Yeah, well, real quickly to your point, man, about it being good to be inspired. I say two things: ain't nothing wrong with being sad or uninspired, and ain't nothing wrong with being inspired. No matter what you feel, don't ever apologize to anybody about how you feel. You know, It's your right to feel whatever you feel, and the only question really is, given whatever your preferences, priorities, and principles are, what are you going to try to do in order to find the best outlet that you can for expressing those emotions and what you're going to deal with them? But let's talk about my upbringing. You asked me about that. So I'm a PK, man. I'm a pastor's kid. I grew up in the church. My dad is a pastor. My mom's an evangelist. And I don't have a memory of a stage of life where that was not a big part of things. And it's a relatively large church community, inner city, west side of Chicago, and all black church. And everybody in that church, man, is like an extension of my family, cousins, aunts, uncles, friends. And so I grew up in an environment where there was a very strong sense of community. And there was a lot of emphasis on how we can encourage one another to use our gifts and talents to make our individual lives better, but to also serve the people around us and help them, realize their potential. And so you can say a lot of this kind of outlook that I have on life comes from my father, comes from my mother, and the kind of upbringing that I had. One of my memories as a kid is one, I hated it at the time, but it was being in church services at least a few nights a week. I hated it because, church services were boring to me, but those were really formative years because I made a lot of great friends. I spent a lot of time around leaders in the community who were sowing seeds of wisdom and encouragement, self-confidence into my life. I didn't know that it was happening at the time, but when I look back, I say, man, I'm so grateful to really have that. I come from a family where I'm lucky enough to know who both of my parents are and have them be together and have them love us. My brothers and I were all cool. I didn't realize until later on in life that that's actually pretty fortunate to be able to say, I'm not at war with my family. I love my family. We like each other. We're friends with each other. And that, I'm grateful for my upbringing. Like anybody else, I did stupid stuff. I made mistakes. I had fights with my parents and stupid, petty fights with my brothers. Had a lot of challenging times. But I think overall, man, as I look back, I'm pretty grateful for the kind of upbringing that I had. Grew up in Chicago, Illinois, around the time of the Chicago Bulls dynasty. So, Michael Jordan was really big when I was a kid. And that had a big influence on me, because MJ, I don't know if you saw this Last Dance documentary.
I've been following. I was following a lot of your posts about it. I know you were following it as well and watched the whole thing, as did I.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I mean, MJ just had like this drive, this tenacity, this killer instinct, this determination to be the best that he could be at his sport. And I mean, growing up as a kid in Chicago, watching that, you admire that so much. And that was kind of like just the concept of work ethic that you had as a kid in Chicago. Yeah, like you just saw that, the point of life was to find your thing that you're supposed to be the Michael Jordan of and to get after, So those kind of influences kind of, are what shaped my upbringing.
What sect was your church, and what do you remember that they told you or did for you or helped you learn to do on your own or whatever that helped you build like self-confidence? Like what was it maybe specifically about the church and then what they were teaching you or what sect it was that, made you so determined and made this a unique place to be besides the sense of community even or beyond that?
Yeah, well, one of the positive ways in which that sense of community, expressed itself was just an outright refusal to allow you to get away with selling yourself short. If you ever said something like, I don't know X, people would correct you and say, no, you haven't learned how to do it yet. Or I can't do X. No, you haven't taught yourself how to do it yet. You can do it. You just haven't taken the time to make that a priority, right? Or if you needed to go to the, go up to the choir and sing or get up and speak or do something, and you said, oh, I don't have the ability, I'm scared. People wouldn't let you get away with that. They would challenge you with, why not you? Why can't you be just as good as this person? Why can't you go do that thing that you're being challenged to do? And then I also think Bible study, Bible stories. Bible stories are, a lot of people look at the Bible as this book of just preachy list of do's and don'ts, but there were stories of ordinary people who overcame incredible odds. And most of the heroes in the Bible were not like kings. They were not like the celebrities of their day or the rich people of their day. They were people that, may have come from poverty, people that had like low-end jobs or people that were on the margins of society. And so I just grew up having it fed to me by the people around me that there is nothing about being an outcast. There is nothing about being on the margins that makes it less possible for God to do great things through your life. You know what I mean? So that community just never allowed me to argue for my limitations. They taught me at all times to fight like hell for my possibilities, you know?
That's great. It just sounds like a good balance between like being positive, and giving people good feelings about themselves, but also challenging them at the same time throughout the church.
Yeah, and I'll actually add one bit of precision, because I would say I don't really believe in positive thinking. And, I think for a lot of people, positive thinking is about, pretending to feel good when you don't, or, making yourself smile when you're really sad, or, being dishonest about the BS that's going on in your life, and, just find a positive way to think about it. And I don't really push myself to do that. If I'm not in a good mood, I give myself full freedom to not be in a good mood. I believe in creative thinking. I believe in self-determined thinking. So if I'm having a bad day, that's cool. But the question is, how am I going to conduct or channel those emotions in a constructive way, right? Because life isn't a performance where I have to give myself a grade based on the emotion that I'm having right now. It's not like I get an F when I'm sad. I get a D if I feel jealousy, and I get an A when I feel happy. Like, you know what I mean? Like life is this dynamic process. And no matter what emotion I'm in, that feeling can be assimilated into the creative process. Life isn't about feeling. Life is about something bigger than feeling. And you don't have to make yourself be positive. It's allowing yourself the freedom to be human, and understanding that to be human is to be creative in any state. And so I believe in emotional versatility. I define emotional versatility as knowing how to be at peace with all points on the emotional spectrum. You know what I mean? And I think emotional versatility is a much healthier, constructive goal to prioritize than happiness or positivity.
Yeah, there's so many directions we could go in, but it just got me thinking, and this has come up on the podcast with other people, like, because I think most people prefer to experience the positive emotions and the joyous ones, but obviously we need to experience the negative ones and sadness and all those, ones that we don't enjoy as much. But for me, I guess it's more about not being consumed by the negative emotions. Feel them, experience them, don't deny them. But do I have to stay in that space for the same amount of time that I would prefer to stay in the space of the positive emotions? So that's kind of like how I approach it. But I don't know. I'm learning from you. I'm learning every day more how to deal with these things.
Well, it's certainly permissible and okay and normal to have preferences, right? We all prefer those high mood states over those low mood states.
Right.
I mean, they feel better. And, I'm not a masochist. I don't endorse just like seeking out the low mood states, but it's rather about learning to work with them in a healthy way. I mean, some of our greatest art has come from those very kind of states that we want to run away from, right? And clearly there's something of value there. Pain can carry as much information as pleasure can. And I think it's more about, I think about that Bobby McFerrin song back in the day, "Don't Worry, Be Happy." He said, "In every life you have some trouble, but when you worry, don't make it double," right? So you can have a negative emotion, but you don't have to beat yourself up over the fact that you have a negative emotion. You know what I mean? And so I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. When they feel bad, they feel bad about feeling bad, and then they get caught in this perpetual cycle of treating bad feelings as if it's evidence that you're like this evil sinner who's underperforming and needs to purge your soul. And that just complicates things.
Right. I find myself doing that because I'll be dealing with some problem in my life, but then I'll think to myself, oh, my life isn't so bad. What about the people who are less fortunate, blah, 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 blah. But, everyone, it's all relative, and everyone has to experience, their own life and deal with their own issues and emotions and all that.
Yeah. One example one analogy that I use for this is like with music. Some forms of music are much easier to dance to than others, right? Like if, you've been to a wedding before, and, like at weddings, there are certain standards that they play, right? I mean, they may play a song like, I don't know, like YMCA, or they may play a song like Happy by Pharrell, or Tonight's Gonna Be a Good Night by Black Eyed Peas. And when music like that is playing, everybody from the kids to the old people can get on the dance floor, and you can't get it wrong, right? You can move your body in any way. You can jump up and down, and it's an easy form of music to dance to. To me, that's what happiness is like. Happiness is like a genre of music that everybody loves because it's easy to dance to. You're never confused when you're happy. When you feel good, you don't pick up the phone and call up your best friend and say, "Hey man, I got all these good feelings. What can I do? Give me some direction." Like you just know how to express it, and like you can't get it wrong. But then what happens when the DJ changes the tune and the DJ goes to like swing, or the DJ goes to like polka? You know what I mean? Something crazy. Now it's like, everybody starts to sit down, and the only people who can stay on the dance floor are the people that really know how to dance, the people that have some moves, because certain genres are more demanding of you, and they will make you look like a complete fool if you don't have any coordination and if you don't know what you're doing. And that's what like the negative emotions are like. They're not as easy to dance to as happiness. When you're sad, when you're depressed, when you're jealous, when you're angry, like that's when you got to call a friend and be like, "Yo, man, what should I do? Because I don't have any moves. I don't have any moves for this kind of emotional music." And you have to learn what I call psychological choreography. The other forms of feeling require us to think a little bit more critically and creatively about how we deal with them. But once you learn some moves, once you learn some skills, you stop resenting those feelings, because you're no longer the kind of person that can only be comfortable on the dance floor when happy is playing. You're the kind of person where you say, "All right, I don't like this as much as the easy stuff, but I know how to dance to it. I got some moves. I don't have to take myself off the dance floor and sit down and just watch the other people in the game. I can stay on, and I can have a good time here too."
So we have to train ourselves to understand our emotions better and how to deal with them. It takes effort and a conscious choice almost to be able to deal with these things better in life. It's not going to happen on its own.
Yeah, it's natural to resist and resent those aspects of our lives that say, "I'm not going to let you find the meaning in this," by lazily sitting back and hoping that it smacks you in the face independently of what you actually choose to do. There are moments in life where you don't get to have any meaning unless you work your butt off for the meaning. And negative emotions are carriers of a much more complex form of information than positive emotions. And so we have to work. It's harder. It's like going from 2 + 2 to algebra. Yeah, I'm going to resent that. I'm going to resist that. It's much more difficult, but having it easier isn't necessarily the same as having it better. Just because something is difficult to you doesn't mean that it isn't better for you. Sometimes the most difficult things are the very things that contribute most to our evolution. They're the very things that allow us to take it to the next level, to actualize potential that we didn't even know we had,
Yeah, no doubt. What about your childhood and interests maybe outside of church? Like what kind of kid were you? Like elementary school? Were you into sports, into music? Were you into other things? What were your sort of other outlets besides the church, I guess? And what kind of kid were you?
Well, let's be clear, man. When I was a kid, all my interests were outside of the church. I had to go.
I gotcha.
But
I wouldn't assume that because I wouldn't have assumed that, per se, for sure.
Yeah, if it was interesting to me, it was definitely outside the church. But I love sports. My brothers and I would play basketball all the time. I wasn't very good, but I loved it, man. It was fun, just being out there, the camaraderie, the competitiveness, almost every life lesson I learned, I got a chance to like experience it really through sports. I love video games. Back in the day, my brothers and I, and friends in the neighborhood, I mean, we could lock ourselves in the basement, man, and play video games all day long. I always loved to read. When I was a kid, I read a lot more like comic books and mystery novels. I still like a lot of graphic novels today. I got like 2 shelves devoted just to like graphic novels. You're never too old, in my view, to read comics. I was really into baseball. I loved watching baseball, collecting baseball cards. I liked riding the bike with my friends. I was a kid, man.
Yeah,
I was a kid. Yeah,
similar things for myself and similar
yeah,
era as well for myself. Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
And what about like going into like, high school? Like what were you interested? Did you have like a thought on what like your future might look like, college or what you're going to study or become? Were those thought sort of ideas in your head and conversations being had with your family?
Yes. So high school was really interesting, man, because I went into high school with no thought of things like theater, right? And I remember there was this guy, he was one of the first friends I met in high school. We saw that there was this audition for a school play. And the lady who was the director, for all of the high school musicals and the high school plays, she was always like so desperate for guys because, in high school,
Right.
this was before Zac Efron made, high school musical theater popular, right? Now it's really cool. Disney makes it look cool for everybody to do. But back in the day, man, if you were a dude, that was like a big no-no. So you never had enough guys doing like high school musicals. And she was always like heavily recruiting. And she recruited us, and we thought it would be funny to try out as a joke. We didn't understand the situation. We tried out, man, and we made it. We actually made the play. And, we're a couple of scared young high school students. We're not going to back out now. It's like, well, I guess the joke's on us. We made it. But what the heck, man? We're not doing anything else, right? And so we did this play. And I remember, man, like my first night of rehearsal, it was unlike anything I ever seen. We did like this read through, and then, the script, all the different people playing the different characters. The director like blocked the set, blocked the stage and like showed us all the different things we're going to do. And like being part of this process where I'm working with other people to play this gigantic game of make believe, where we're going to take words on a printed page and we're going to somehow make that come alive as a story that other people are going to believe. And we're going to make them cry and laugh. This is crazy. I want to be a part of this for the rest of my life, man. This is magic, and I fell in love with theater in high school. And, every semester from that point on, I was a part of either the high school musical or the fall play or whatever it was. And those were some of the funnest years of my life because theater is what opened me up. My background of religion and church culture is what instilled me with my values and with a kind of theoretical self-confidence that you can be whatever you choose to be. But there's nothing like the self-confidence, man, that comes from having to do improv, that comes from having to be on the stage and act, that comes from like you just don't have the luxury of self-consciousness in theater. You know what I mean? You just don't have the luxury. You can feel it as an emotion, but you got to go out there and be.
Got to keep going.
You got to keep going, right? Like if your improv teacher is like, okay, you are, an alligator, and you are Tom Cruise, and the two of y'all got to have a conversation about somebody pick that topic. Somebody picks a stupid topic like Oreo cookies. Okay, go. And you're like, wait a minute, an alligator? How does an alligator talk? It doesn't matter, dude. Make a freaking choice now. Go.
Yeah.
And you don't have the opportunity to overthink anything. You don't have the opportunity to wait on the right answer. You've got to make it up. What does an alligator sound like? And what would an alligator say if it was talking to Tom Cruise about this dumb topic? You just got to go. It's stupid. It's dumb. It's impractical, but you got to go. And so theater taught me how to overcome my preciousness and my perfectionism surrounding creativity. It taught me how to laugh at myself, man, how to not take myself so seriously. And that was probably the defining feature of my high school experience. I can go wherever you want me to go with that, but like that's something that sticks out to me.
That's great that you were able to learn that at like such a young age. Maybe some people learn it at a younger age even, but like I feel like that's something that, most humans and myself probably included, struggles with to some degree. It's just to laugh at yourself and not take yourself so seriously all the time.
Yeah, well, that kind of perspective gets treated as if it's wisdom. And I don't really like that because when you treat all of the useful perspectives as if it's wisdom, it kind of makes you think that you've got to be this special, rare, deep
right
person. You got to have a long beard or something like that. But so much of the most valuable insights really just come from pushing yourself or being pushed to face the music in different areas of life. So it's not so much that that I'm wise or that I journeyed out to the Himalayas and talked to a guru. It's what else can you do when you have to stand on a freaking stage and pretend to be an alligator in front of people? Like, you just can't take yourself seriously. It's just not possible. You don't have to be very smart. You just have to be in a situation where you got to make choices.
Interesting. And what about college age, and those years of your life, and discovering Kurt Elling? And we'll get into what was going on in your life around then.
Yeah, so college was kind of a culture shock for me. I mean, I grew up in this very religiously conservative home where, anything that didn't have Jesus all over it, and explicitly so, was like flat out demonic and to be feared. You know what I mean? And man, like, even to the point of secular music, like we didn't listen to we weren't allowed to. Of course, we had our own underground smuggling industry in the house where we could listen to hip hop and things like that. But in college, man, you got so many different people of different races, different religions, different personality types. And to go from a relatively sheltered childhood to like all of this stimulation, it was like, whoa, it was crazy, And it was fun, but it was also stressful because it kind of sent me into a confusing whirlwind where I started to question, as one should, I started to question my beliefs. Well, wait a minute. I was raised this way because that's what my parents taught me was true. That's all I knew. But here's a cat over here that's Muslim. Here's a cat over here that's atheist. Here's a cat over here that's a different type of Christian telling me that my kind of Christianity is wrong. Who's right? How would I even know? And that's when I sort of, begin to develop, a sense of philosophy. Instead of running away from the hard questions, I ran into them. And I began to engage people that were having deep conversations about all the stuff you're supposed to be scared to talk about. And that stage of life really influenced me to be the kind of person who has a lot of faith in the power to have constructive dialogue with other people about all the stuff that we're supposedly not supposed to talk about all the stuff that we're supposed to be scared to say. And I think that has been a tremendous asset for me in my career, in my relationships, in my personal life, that I just don't approach any topic with fear. I believe that every conversation can be had if you're willing to put in the work to learn how to navigate it. And if you're willing to be patient and non-defensive about what other people think, and if you can liberate yourself from a psychological dependency on other people seeing things your way, you can be unthreatened by that, and that stage of life taught me that. But I'm going to do a complete turn because we could really get into that.
Yeah, I had the follow-up questions about what school did you say you went to, and what were you studying at the time?
I went to Western Michigan University in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Okay, how far is that from where you grew up in Chicago?
Yep, that was about roughly a 3-hour drive.
Gotcha. Okay, not too far.
That was just about right for me because
right.
I definitely didn't want to be in Illinois because I felt like I would basically have to live at home. I wanted to get away, but I didn't want to be too far away.
Right.
So this was perfect. Yeah.
I follow. Yeah, I mean, how do you not get like sort of defensive about like what other people's feelings or opinions are that may differ from yours or not be the ones that you want from them? Because like, even if I don't like say something like to someone who tells me something that I don't like for whatever reason, I could feel myself like experiencing like, oh, I can't believe that person said that or believes that, or why did I, it's like a little pit in your stomach. But it seems like you don't get that as much. You're able to like almost, like you're saying, be fearless in a sense and just like be able to just deal like without having those feelings. I don't know. Correct me if I'm off base with where I'm going with this.
Yeah. Well, being non-defensive about other people's disagreement, I look at it as like being in shape. there is no absolute state of in shape that you can achieve, but it's a process and it's a lifelong process, and you can become more and more fit over time. And so I would say I'm not at some state of enlightenment where it's like I never get defensive, I never get annoyed, I never get mad. But over time, I've gotten a lot better at just being what I call trigger free. You know what I mean? And I think part of the key to being trigger free is just having the ability to laugh at yourself. So think about trolling, for instance. Most people are so easily trolled, but think about the dynamics that are taking place when someone's trying to troll you. Whenever someone trolls you, they're looking for a button to push, and they start with whatever they think is going to work on you, right? So maybe if you're white, they'll say something about your whiteness. Maybe they know they can hit you up with the R word. Maybe that can trigger you. They don't really know, but they have a stereotype about you, and they're going to see what they can push. Maybe with me, if it's black, they'll accuse me of having a victim mindset, or maybe use the slur, whatever. They don't really know, but they're trying to work with a stereotype to see what button they can push. And my response to that, your response to that, is going to be everything they need to know. If I respond to it in a way that's defensive, then they know that I need them to take me seriously. And once they know that I need them to take me seriously, they have the power. They've got the power to push my buttons and pull my strings, because now they can sit back and enjoy a fun and delightful game of never allowing me to be seen as serious by them. So here I am getting my argument, but this is what I meant. Nah, that's not a good argument. But you're misunderstanding me. I am not what you say I am. Nah, yes you are. But if you look at my history, and if you look at this thing, I swear I'm a good person. Nah, yeah. You're a complete idiot. And they just have fun with you, picking you apart, right? And the underlying problem isn't that they disagree with you. It isn't that they believe you. It's that you need them to take you seriously in order for you to feel good about yourself. And what happens the moment you can laugh at yourself and be like, that's funny. That's who you think I am? That's hilarious. That's the impression that you get of me? That's actually kind of funny. You know what? I can actually see how I show up that way. And you know what? I don't even care if I'm misunderstood in that way. That's okay. That's hilarious. That's funny. It's like a game of tug of war. If you and I are playing tug of war, as long as you're pulling at the other end of the rope, we got ourselves a good contest. And if I'm stronger than you, I'm going to win. You have to be stronger than me. But the moment you let the other end of that rope go, who looks like the idiot? I'm the one that falls down. Doesn't even matter if I'm stronger than you. And you don't have to worry about being stronger than me. You can just choose to opt out of it, right? And so I think a lot of people get themselves caught up in these experiences of arguing with people, fighting with people that don't even take them seriously, people who just want to win a power match, people who just want to one-up you, people who just want to feel good at your expense. And because they're so psychologically dependent on someone else taking them seriously, they get triggered. But just let that go. Like, who is this person anyway? Like, I mean, is this person your boss at work? Is this your spouse? Is this somebody you have to live with? I mean, because there are people whose opinion of you will have a radical impact on your life, but the number of actual people for whom that's true, it's so much smaller. It is not the case that everybody on Twitter needs to matter in your life. And you can forget that when you're immersed in these worlds where you're just responding to everybody that's got something to say about what you think. You know what I mean?
Yep. Tell me more about college. What were you studying? You said Western Michigan. That's right. But what were you studying there? And we'll go from there.
So, when I first went to school, I went on a theater scholarship because I did theater all throughout high school. That's what I fell in love with. I auditioned for Western's theater department, got a scholarship, and was doing that. And then somewhere in that first year, that's when I kind of had that crisis of faith I described to you. And through a long story made short, through a bunch of twists and turns, I wound up in the philosophy department. And the reason I wound up there is because I initially went to my religious environments that I was familiar with to ask all these questions. Well, how do we know if the Bible's true? All that kind of stuff. And that wasn't taken too kindly in those spaces. And so I found my home in the philosophy department because it was like my professors didn't care. It's like they didn't care what you believed as long as you could argue for it. And so even if you agreed with them, They wouldn't let you off the hook. They'd be like, okay, well, what's your argument for that? What's your reason for it? And their attitude was, I don't care what you believe, but I do care about you being rational and you being intellectually honest. And so I could ask them anything. I could doubt anything. I could think about anything. And so that space felt really free for me because it allowed me the opportunity to explore. But there's so many different rabbit holes in this story. But I know since we're partially here to talk about people that have impacted me, there's
Sure.
innumerable amount. There's one interesting experience that I had in college. I think it was like my freshman year. There was this guy who lived next door to me in the dorms. And he would always be playing like jazz. And it was so weird because he's this young cat. You know, we're all young and dude's just listening to jazz all the time. But he was real cool. And one day he was playing this album. And there was something about that music that was it was almost like hypnotic for me. And I was like, dude, who is that? And he said, this is Kurt Elling. I was like, Kurt Elling, who is that? And I looked at it and it's this white cover. You got this white dude sitting back on like a chair with a ponytail. And he sounded black. I remember him, he sounded like a brother. I'm like, this is a white dude? He was like, yeah. And the record label was Blue Note. And the name of the album was Close Your Eyes. And I was listening to it and like, man, like everything this dude was saying, it was like, he was not only a real soulful singer, but he also had like this philosophical quality to his lyricism. He was a deep cat. You listened to him. And I just started listening to it more. And then I got interested in the dude's story. I found out he's from Chicago like I am. And then check this out, because I have this artistic background where I'm interested in theater and music. But now I'm studying philosophy because I got all these questions. And I read something about this dude's story that has a big impact on me. Turns out this dude, before he was a jazz musician, he was studying at the University of Chicago, working towards a master's in divinity, which is kind of like right, up my alley and my path. And he was like just, I think, a few classes away from getting his master's in divinity. And the dude dropped out of school because he felt like God was speaking to him through music. And he just starts doing jazz, man. It's crazy. He just starts doing jazz, right? And this guy is now like one of the most widely respected, celebrated jazz vocalists. And he's award-winning, Grammy award-winning, people know his name who care about jazz. And the dude's just a bad dude. And but that story really moved me, man. Because coming from a religious background, you equated something like the voice of God with just like a sort of puritanical, moral sort of thing of like, don't do evil, don't commit any sins, be nice to everyone. And Kurt Elling represented for me this idea that one can experience the power and the presence of divinity through art, through any aspect of life. And it kind of like opened me up to this more like mystical way of seeing things, right? And realizing that what we call the divine can be experienced through anything and anyone, and that art, theater, music, poetry, any of that stuff, even sports, it's as sacred as anything else. Kurt Elling helped me sort of dissolve that distinction, that rather arbitrary distinction between the secular and the sacred that kind of dominated my life. And it kind of opened me up to this path of thinking about things in a different way. And if I may, there's a lyric to one of his songs called Neverland. And I remember this was the song I heard when I just had like this experience of like, wow, like what I'm listening to is like speaking to my soul in some deep way. He says in that song, and I'm probably going to butcher it. He says, my friends, every day we go to our everyday work and we return to our everyday homes and sit in our everyday chairs. We drink from the everyday cup. We eat the everyday meal, but we never allow ourselves to go into the extraordinary spaces in our hearts and our minds. I ask you, my friends, how do you think a book is written? How do you think a song is born? How do you think a race is won? How do you think the world gets started? If a little daydreaming is dangerous, the cure for it is not to dream less, but to dream more, to dream all the time. And those lyrics arrested me, man. They arrested me. I was like, oh man, this cat is on to something, man. I want to live a life that's characterized by whatever the heck he's talking about. I got to understand that way of thinking more, and I want to embody it. So that's my guy. That's my guy I'm talking about.
Oh, that's awesome. So you've been just a fan since, and you've been listening to his music and just following him since then, pretty much. Have you seen him perform live? Have you met him or anything like that?
He came to the college that I went to. A few years later, I had a chance to meet him there. And then when I was in New York, like a couple of years back, I'm trying to think of the name of the jazz club. I don't remember, but I had a chance to go see him live there. My wife and I went, a couple of friends, a few friends with us. And it was around the time of my birthday, but I had a chance to see him, and I had a chance to meet him and tell him that story, tell him the story I just told you of how his music impacted my life, which was really cool.
How did he respond to that? What was that like, meeting him?
Oh, he gave me a hug, man. He gave me a hug. He appreciated
That's awesome.
it. Yeah. It was funny too, because everybody was coming up to him. I mean, we're in the middle of New York, and everybody's coming up to him and they're like giving him music that they did. And most of them were like musicians, trying to get some tips about music or whatever. And I was like, look, man, I'm not trying to get you to put me on, I'm doing my thing, but I just want to tell you the story, bro, of how you impacted my life. And that was really cool. I feel like, I just sort of feel like that to me is what life is about, having the opportunity to come into contact with another person's story and to see that you had some positive influence on how that story unfolded.
That's awesome. That's good stuff all around for sure. And I know I've taken up a ton of your time already, but I'd love to hear more about like your path after college and where you kind of went from there. And I know you were working with Praxis and different organizations, and you got a ton going on. So I kind of will give you the floor for the rest of the way and tell me where your story went from there, and maybe how Kurt Elling played a part in moving forward in your life as well.
Yeah, man. Well, I recommend anyone listening who's interested in another aspect of my story to go listen to podcast I did maybe about a month ago with Paul Vanderklay, where I talked a little bit about, some of the twists and turns related to, my pursuit of the arts and things like that. There are like 20 different versions I could give because I've worked so many odd jobs and there are so many subplots. But I guess I'll say, after college, my first job was as a financial advisor at American Express Financial Advisors. And I ended up quitting that job after, I don't even know how long. It may have been like a year or something like that. I put in the work to get my financial licenses. I'm on the path. I have every indication that I think I could be successful at this thing, but I had a lot of unanswered questions about the things that I wanted to do artistically. And a lot of my reason for doing that job, partially I was really interested in finance. I truly was, but I also was afraid. I was also afraid of being poor. I had just spent all my time in college being a broke dude. And I kind of really felt like I can't follow my dreams if I'm broke. And I felt like I needed a lot of money. And so at some point I just kind of was like, you know what? I'm super afraid of waking up someday and having regrets, feeling like I spent all my prime years chasing money and didn't give myself a chance to swing for the fences. So I need to get up out of here, I need to get up out of here. And I did. I moved to LA and I went after a lot of my dreams there. And what was interesting about that was a lot of, so I have a friend whose name is Paige Kennedy. He's an actor in LA. He's been on the show. He's played Radon. What's the name of the Blue Mountain State? He played U-Turn on Weeds, and I was a roommate with him for a while. And so this guy is working in the industry, and I would meet a lot of his friends in the industry. And ironically, most of the people that I really gravitated to and really, really liked were people that were on the business side, people that were working in production. And I spent a lot of time hanging out with those people. They weren't celebrities, but they were people who kind of made decisions about who would be in the spotlight, how you take a production from concept to completion, the business side. And that became really interesting to me. And I just sort of like forgot about the performance stuff, like the production side, like being able to pull together all these different elements, being able to create platforms and all that kind of stuff became interesting to me. And so that kind of set the stage for, spending like the next 10 years of my life working in the startup space. And for the last 6 years, the startup that I've been working on, I co-founded it with Isaac Morehouse 6 years ago. It's called Praxis. It's an apprenticeship program that helps aspiring young professionals develop skills, learn how to market themselves, helps them launch their career, helps them find jobs. And it's an alternative to higher education. We believe that, the traditional go get a degree, go into debt, that's the necessary way to make it in life. We believe that there's more to it than that. And so, I've been doing that for the past 6 years. And now my work is focused around the work that I do with FEE, which is stands for the Foundation for Economic Education. And I do a lot of teaching about like economic literacy, entrepreneurial thinking. I work with a lot of high school and college students and talk with them about how to apply the thinking that entrepreneurs do to not just starting business, but to everything they do in life. Going after, creative dreams, solving problems in their relationships, being better students, whatever it may be, because I think that artists and entrepreneurs really are defined more by a way of thinking and a way of being than by the particular project that they may happen to be working on at any given moment in time. And so now I'm at a stage in my career where I'm drawing from my experience in the arts, drawing from my experience as a startup founder and an entrepreneur, and teaching people how to approach everything they do with a sense of artistry and a sense of agency, so that they can be the predominant creative force in their own lives. And so that's primarily what I'm focused on right now. And I'll just leave it at that, man.
No, that's awesome stuff. And that's just cool stuff for me to hear. And just like everything you talk about is just seems to be based in logic and optimism and also in reality. It's not, you don't talk about fluff, you talk about deep things, but also in a practical way that people can understand. And that's why I'm talking to you right now. And I appreciate all this stuff. And it's definitely inspirational to me. Why don't you tell people where they can find you, follow you, anything else you're working on? I'll give you the floor again here.
Yeah, you can check out my blog at tkcoleman.com. You can check out my project right now called Revolution of One. You can get all the links to everything I'm doing with that project at fee.org/rev1. Revolution of One, I have a video podcast. I've got 3 live streams that I do every week. I have a media series of like feature videos that I put out. You can find out about everything there. Or you can check me out on Twitter. I'm just at TK_Coleman. Follow me on Instagram, official TK Coleman. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
Awesome. I appreciate your time. I'll let you get on with the rest of your day, and we'll talk soon.
Hey, brother, it's been fun talking to you, man. Thanks for having me on.
You got it. Later.
Cheers.
So there you have it. My conversation with TK Coleman. That was a lot of fun. I really appreciate TK taking the time and for sharing his story. I feel like that dude just rolls out of bed saying inspiring things. I don't know. I just really connect with a lot of what TK talks about and find what he talks about helpful. Anyway, for everything about this show, of course, head to peoplewelovepodcast.com. And I think that's about all I got for today. I appreciate you guys listening. Thanks as always, and let's talk soon. Peace.